Started now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today for our 2026 Climate Careers Panel, hosted by UCR in celebration of Earth Month. I'm Kristen Kopko, the research manager for the Center for Community Solutions at the UCR School of Public Policy, and I will be your moderator for today's conversation. So this panel is a collaboration between CSERT, the UCR Office of Sustainability, and the UCR Career Center, and also the UCR Center for Community Solutions. And we put this event together really with students and early career professionals in mind, especially those who are thinking about how their values and education and prior experience can lead to meaningful careers in the climate and sustainability space. So I'd like to give a quick shout out to our co-host, Francis Metallo from the Office of Sustainability, Xin Fan from the Career Center, and Sarah Salzgiver from CSERT, who have all just been very instrumental in making this webinar happen. So before we jump into the panel, I'm going to pass it over to Francis if he's able to share a few brief announcements. If not, we will skip to Shin.
Francis' mic is having a bit of technical difficulties, so we'll move on to Shin.
Hi everyone, my name is Yin. I'm a career specialist at the UCL Career Center. Welcome to this panel. So it's very excited invited our four panelists here today, and then we will have a lot of great expertise and from them. For career center, we provide career counseling, and then also we do have the student for intern job search, and then at the same time, and every quarter, we organize career fair. So for career fair, it's for you for lifetime, and then also for career center services, after you graduate, you still can utilize career center services for another 1 year for free. So welcome today. Yeah. So let's switch to Sarah for Caesar.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. So I'm Sarah Salzgiver. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at the Center for Environmental Research and Technology, or otherwise known as CSERT. We're UC Riverside's largest research center within the Bournes College of Engineering. Our center brings together multiple disciplines throughout UCR to address society's most pressing environmental challenges in air quality, climate change, energy, and transportation. So what really makes CSAR unique is that our research is very applied. It's hands-on. We're not just working in a traditional lab setting. We actually do partner very closely with industry, government, city officials to develop, solutions that are actually implemented in the real world. So, for example, we study vehicle emissions, clean fuels, develop, advanced energy technologies, and conduct atmospheric research to better understand air pollution. Some pretty cool stuff. Our students are a really big part of our research team. So if anyone is interested, I definitely encourage you to connect with one of our faculty about volunteer opportunities if you're an undergrad, or consider CSERT if you're thinking about a master's or a PhD. And we actually have a great example of that today. We have Ryan Drover, one of our CSERT alumni here. So joining us as a panelist, and you'll learn more about that in a bit. Thanks.
And so now we will move on to today's panel. And we're really excited about the group we have with us today. Our panelists work across, different sectors in the climate space. You'll hear a little bit about their journeys, how they got started, what their work looks like today. And also, if you have any questions at any time, please utilize the Q&A function to submit those. And the backstage team will help review and share those with me. So let's dive in. I will have each panelist introduce themselves and share a little bit about how they got connected to the space. We'll make it super easy for our panelists and we'll go in alphabetical order. So Alex first, Erica, Miranda, then Ryan. So, Alex, do you mind telling us a little bit about your role, your background, and what inspired you to get into this work?
Sure thing. Hi, all. Thank you for having me. My name is Alex, and today I'm a consultant with the company AECOM based in Orange County. I contribute to their climate advisory service line, which is a lot of different things for a lot of different clients, ranging from decarbonization to resilience to the economic component of that, and so on. Um, Immediately before joining AECOM, I was part of the energy transition planning efforts at the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, out in San Pedro Bay. So, hoping to bring today a bit of perspective from both the private sector and public sector in career paths there. So, thank you.
And we will pass it over to Erica.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Erica Beyer. I am the Water Resources and Planning Manager at the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. It is a joint powers agreement between 5 agencies that deals with water resources, water quality, water quantity across the Santa Ana watershed. So much of my work has to do with looking at water in a long-term lens. So with regard to climate change and climate variability on access to clean and available water. Before this, I worked with the DoD at NAVFAC Exwic as a physical scientist there. I drafted up a climate resilience assessment plan that was going to be available and ready for people to use at naval bases. So that's a little bit of my background. I've worked in the public and the private sector, but mostly public. I've worked as an environmental specialist as well for a county in Minnesota. Nice to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you. And Miranda, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here with all of you virtually. My name is Miranda Evans, and you'll see I'm Deputy Director for Community and Economic Development for the City of Riverside. And right now I have the privilege of serving as Interim Director. And so what that means in that capacity, I have the privilege of leading our economic development strategy and implementation, which later on today we'll talk about the economic impact of climate tech careers and how powerful that is for Riverside. And I also work closely and lead our planning team. We're undergoing a general plan update right now and climate action and adaptation plan right now, directly connected to climate careers as well. Our building and safety team, our code enforcement team, and our real property services team, and our city-owned portfolio of property. So excited to share my career journey with all of you. I feel when I was in undergrad, I didn't even know you can grow up and be an economic developer. And it's such an amazing way to serve your community. I've spent my 15-year career so far in the public sector working for a variety of different cities and am absolutely so proud to be on Team Riverside and have amazing partners such as UCR. So looking forward to sharing more of that today with all of you and appreciate being here.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, we will pass it over to Ryan.
Hi, everyone, and I'll echo the same sentiment. Happy to be here. I'm a UCR alum from, I guess, 2 years ago at this point. I worked on a PhD in chemical and environmental engineering at CSERT, as Sarah mentioned. We do a lot of that real world activity, real world work. And so that was really my entrance into this space, where my thesis was primarily around shipping emissions, working with the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. So I must have just missed Alex in some of those contexts, where we would work with the intersection of the industry operators working in that space, working with the government, the regulatory authorities, and how they're looking at technology and fuel advancement and understanding how to properly account for some of those changes that are actively being deployed and proposed at the moment. Now I've continued sort of moving in that technical direction and am a consultant with Ramble. We're a Danish-based sustainability-oriented company that does consulting primarily in the engineering and environmental spaces. So that covers all media of air, water, soil, site remediation, and now split my time doing a lot of work of regulatory engagement, policy support, as well as some more of the technical development for new technologies, understanding how some of these new developing clean energy, low emitting technologies structure and fit into an existing regulatory and authority structure, and how we can actually take some of these theoretical ideas and move them into a deployment piece. My bridge to those two from my PhD to what I do now comes from a bit of time in the government side where I worked for a year in the South Coast Air Quality Management District that covers everyone in Southern California in this inland air basin, doing clean energy technology deployment, really working with pre-commercial technologies and understanding what they needed from a business and economic side, as well as some of those feasibility questions. And then spent a year in Sacramento between the governor's office and state assembly to see how the supply chain and particularly shipping at our ports were viewed from that state level and connecting some of the federal down to local requirements. So I'll look to bring in some of that in the answers to the rest of the panel here.
Okay, thank you all for introducing yourselves. We will move right into our panel discussion, and panelists are welcome to jump in or not as we go. And the first question is, think back to when you were first starting out in this space. How did you land your first opportunity or job that started out your career?
I might jump on this one because I think I have an easy answer and can anchor again back to Sarah's pitch for CSERT and UCR and undergrad programs as a whole. My first real exposure to this was an undergrad outside of UCR, and my advisor that I got in touch with looked at those questions on the research side. How could I get involved and see some more of the hands-on, tangible side of this? Was what then got me connected to my PhD advisor to be at UCR and CSERT. And through that whole time, was able to see a lot of undergrads and college students, non-college students, high school students be able to come into the lab, see the work that was being done at CSERT, and have that sort of real world application, real world understanding and hands-on experience to then decide where they wanted to go from there. And I think there's a lot of value to getting involved with that. Typically, the faculty, the grad students, everyone is very happy to see undergrads, college students, non-college students getting involved and having some more exposure to this and contributing to the research and everything that's going on. And I think from there, that can open up a lot more of those conversations with mentors to be able to look at next steps and everything that can very naturally follow step by step from there.
That's fantastic, Ryan. I'll jump in and piggyback off of that. And again, coming a different background from the public sector. And really, I encourage all of you, whether you're undergraduate or in your graduate career, explore internships, explore informational interviews, and take those opportunities now to have those exploratory conversations and identify what's the right role for you, what's the right path for you, and what type of careers might get you on that path. And so I remember when I was in undergrad and just starting out, I was very relentless about pursuing informational interviews, internships. Of course, always a bonus if you find a paid internship, and just setting up time with executives, with individuals. My first one was at the Port of San Diego, and I remember I brought donuts. Sometimes some donuts and a smile can go a long way in someone's busy day. And differentiating yourself and really just trying to get your foot in the door. And you don't have to commit to a long-term internship. Maybe it's a one-day informational interview, 1 week shadowing. I also recommend you can reach out and ask to shadow someone. See, what does a day in their life look like? Is that something aligned with your interests, with your skill set, with your educational background? And is it something that energizes you? And so for me, really, my story was a history of trial and error and pursuing opportunities. And each time I got a little bit closer, or I would take away, oh, I really enjoyed this, but I'm curious about this, or that was interesting, but not aligned with what I want to spend my time doing. And so little by little, I found my path. And I can't recommend enough the importance of finding a good mentor and learning from your mentor, and not only gaining insight from them, but being a value add to them and building a great relationship, because that's a relationship you can have for your entire professional career and is very enriching and very rewarding both for you and for your mentor. So keep trying new things. You never know unless you try. And that's really what has gotten me to the seat that I'm in today.
Perfect. I could probably jump on, I could piggyback on that. That would be great. So I didn't land in climate work directly. I kind of migrated through it, through geology and hydrology, doing field work and regulatory work at a county level. That meant inspections, compliance, GIS, groundwater monitoring, modeling, and honestly, a lot of time in some muddy boots, and being out there and doing those inspections and just figuring out how systems actually behave in the real world. From there, I leaned into water resources and groundwater, and that's where the climate issues stopped being more abstract and started becoming a very real situation. So water supply, contamination, infrastructure vulnerability, all of those things are a very real and present issue if we look at climate change and vulnerability and resilience out into the future. Once I understood the science, and the regulatory side, that's when the door opened for, the more larger scale climate work.
And so apparently I was not as strategic as the other three panelists. I also think I'm the only panelist today without one or maybe even several graduate degrees. So when it comes to first job, I was starting out with a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering at 21 years old, and a drive to contribute to something in this climate crisis, but not a lot else. So when it comes to how I got that first job, my story is a bit less, again, strategic than I think what I'm hearing from everybody else. I walked out with this bachelor's degree and I did not graduate with a job in hand. So I took a job in early mornings and evenings, but I spent every afternoon for I think like a few months at a Starbucks where I was just like writing resumes and shipping them into the black box of Indeed and LinkedIn. And I did that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it was like no callbacks ever. And what landed me that first job, that real first job interview was like one high school friend's father was the only person I knew in a field that was called environmental engineering. And he had a friend out in Southern California who had a little bit boutique business that was growing, just like, oh, maybe they'll take a shot on you. So all that to say, even in what we thought was an already, internet-based job search world in 2014, it was old-fashioned word of mouth that got me started. And I mean, I'll say that the first job in retrospect is by far the hardest. And I promise I don't mean that as discouragement, so much as don't take that personally, because it really is just so tough to get that first foot in the door.
That's actually a good transition to our second question, which is, a lot of the students here at UCR aspire to stay in this region or in Southern California more generally. And with that in mind, our next question is, Southern California, faces unique climate challenges, including drought, decreased air quality, extreme heat, etc. How have these regional issues shaped your career path, if at all? And what opportunities do you see emerging locally for students who want to work in climate or sustainability?
I could probably jump in here. So clearly, it definitely, for me anyway, it shows up in drought and groundwater depletion, water quality, water quantity, wildfire impacts. And those aren't future problems. Those are now problems. They're operational constraints right now. So that reality has sort of pushed my work towards groundwater sustainability, regional water quality planning, climate resilience, for infrastructure, things like that. You don't get to stay theoretical here. You have to actually operate in it. So for students, I think that opportunity is really significant. There's a few areas that are growing really fast right now, especially locally. That would be groundwater, Sigma implementation, stormwater capture and recharge, post-wildfire hydrology and watershed recovery, and regional data and decision support systems and networks. If you can work at the intersection of like science and policy and implementation, you're not going to have a problem at all to find work there. So highly suggest looking at your local city, county, and state opportunities. There's lots of internships there, lots of opportunity with regard to this, those particular areas that I had mentioned.
Those are such great points, Erica. I think if I could chime in from the municipal perspective, if you are a problem solver and if you are a planner and if you want to be really where the rubber meets the road on the implementation side, there are so many different career paths for you in local government in a variety of disciplines. So right now, what we're seeing extreme heat. We have our first ever extreme heat summit that the city held last year. And just working on tools, whether it's the Climate Action Adaptation Plan or the city of Riverside. We're fortunate to own our own utility company. And so we're focused on water planning. We have environmental concerns such as even PFAS. And we met an incredible startup company actually through UCR, and they have developed UV light treatment to eliminate PFAS in water. So there's a variety of opportunities there. All things air quality and transportation and land use. And so that's a lot of work when we're planning for our future. And right now, we're creating our general plan for the city, which is who is Riverside in the year 2050? And what type of policies do we need? What does transportation look like? What will the air quality be? What types of transit-oriented developments will we have to encourage multimodal transportation, get some cars off the freeway, keep all of you here as talented graduates so you're not commuting out of Riverside and we're not experiencing brain drain. And environmental justice planning, that's a big area of focus. Extreme heat I touched on already. And then across the city, these are some of the things Erica had shared, but you see a lot of municipal investment right now, whether it's stormwater capture systems, cooling infrastructure. This can be anything from expanding our urban tree canopy, reducing heat island effect, adding more green corridors. Before the city of Riverside was the city of arts and innovation, we were known as the city of trees, and we love that history and want to keep that natural greening and natural cooling in the environment. And as I mentioned, our utility company, RPU, also looking at grid updates. And right now we are doubling our grid capacity to secure our energy future. So where a lot of other communities are either at capacity or experiencing outages, and as a result, their economy is not able to grow. But in Riverside, because of that great planning, we do not have those issues. So anything really to climate data, policy, emissions tracking, climate risk assessments, sustainability reporting. Really, I can't speak enough about the exciting career opportunities in local government, in the climate space, because really that's where the rubber meets the road. And grant writing. Practice your grant writing skills. We need more money. We need more opportunities. So those are fantastic skills to put on your resume.
And I'll jump in. I like this question because it takes a lot of these high-minded career topics that, I know a lot of you all think about at the end of the quarter and kind of brings it back to where it started. Like effects of these types of climate challenges, we know and we feel in our regular lives daily. And those sorts of things might be like it was for me, what inspired these major and or career choices like in this direction in the first place. So I do want to actually answer the question, but I'll begin with an aside that while like these climate challenges are nearly ubiquitous, regardless of geography or jurisdiction, I'd say in many, maybe not all cases, it's often regulations that drive compulsory response actions. With regard to drought or air quality or extreme heat, we know that, none of those effects are unique to California, but California's laws are. The governor's office of climate innovation is. The state specific water resources control board that Erica works alongside is. The, budgeted city scale resources that enable Miranda to do all this stuff, those are unique. um, my point is that all these state specific rules and regulatory authorities force industry and business and governments to take climate environmental action. So apologies for that, but my long-winded point is that regulation isn't simply a constraint, and in this way, it's also opportunity. And that's opportunity that, at least for me, was really fundamental to my career path, especially in the early stages. Um, which is all to say that I think you all are in the right place at the right time for this industry space and these sorts of topics. Um, Regarding those specific climate challenges, and like how they shaped my career path, I certainly have less to say firsthand about drought than, maybe Erica. But for me, it really began, I suppose, with air quality. I mentioned that I did work in the two seaports out in LA, and that's a really big regional and industry success story, which I guess I'll do the justice of telling a short version of. Um, that those two ports are the hub for trans-Pacific trade, not just for the Western United States, but for the country. The throughput from there is significant. And I mean, I know you all in the Inland Empire are well familiar with the upstream logistical pieces of that, all of the warehouses and all of the trailer trucks. But those cargoes are all coming through these ports. And, it's not just the tractor trailers, it's the ships at berth, it's the cargo handling equipment that's made those ports at once upon a time the largest point source of emissions in the air basin and in the region. And by the time of the 1990s, it was so bad that that was environmental justice ground zero. Asthma cancer rates were crazy, and there was a lot of political pressure to do something about it. So it was in it was at that time that those ports adopted some self-enforced policies, green port policy, but namely the Clean Air Action Plan. Hey, if you want to do business at the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, you need to drive a trailer or tractor that's model year X or newer. So slightly reduced emissions, say, than, an older truck. The risk there was, okay, if they don't want to buy a new truck, they'll just have to go to a different port, right? So these ports were betting on the exclusivity of them being a unique resource at scale. So if it works, emissions go down. That was the gamble, and it did pay off. So emissions did go down on the back of that original Clean Air Action Plan. So the ports updated it, 2010, go again, we'll ratchet it down even further. Get newer trucks, can we bring those emissions down? It worked again, such that in 2017, they took that a real big step further. All right, we're going to make it such that to do business at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, you need to be zero emission by 2030. Okay, go. This was about the time that things like Green New Deal were happening upstairs in Congress, and like, oh, can we go zero emission or net zero carbon by 2050? No way, that's impossible. But here in California was this interesting regulatory microcosm where that sort of full scale energy transition was possible to enforce. And so began fundamentally a pretty big energy transition experiment back then, which is all to say that, what you didn't hear me say that whole time was climate change or greenhouse gases, because interestingly enough, this energy transition was prompted on the basis of air quality. That's local air quality. That's emissions like, particulate matter or NOx or SOx. Now, the point being that these energy transitions, not just in the maritime shipping sector, but cross industry, are well underway between, 10 years ago when I started and now. The methodology is pretty similar in taking internal combustion engines and making them battery or electric or hydrogen fuel cell or whatever have you. but the target's a little different. Now it's about reducing those greenhouse gas emissions. So all that's to say is, yeah, air quality was fundamental to the start of my career, but the analog for graduates of 2026 is greenhouse emission reduction. Um, so that's my bit. Thanks.
I think my fellow panelists covered a lot of the big points that I was thinking to hit as well here. So I can stay a high level shorter piece on this, and especially with it sounds like at least three of us having backgrounds coming through the ports. There's absolutely this question that Southern California is the goods movement corridor with US Asia trade, transit, and coming into the US through warehousing, through trucking. That is absolutely a hotbed place to be. And combined with the air quality as really the space that drove me into this, that is where all of this has originally been founded from. But now we start running into some of those questions that bring in the everything factor, where if you want to have decarbonized fuel in shipping, you need to have those alternative fuels available, whether that's natural gas, whether that's methanol and hydrogen-based alternative e-fuels. And then similarly for trucking, you need to have the infrastructure to support charging for those electric trucks. And over the last handful of years, when I was at the governor's office, that was where we were seeing a lot of interest nationwide. We, of course, had the big federal policies under the Biden administration that released an incredible amount of funding that was deployed in those spaces. And that started bringing in a lot of interest around private equity firms and everything else. So you have this question on the finance side that starts bringing in interest from the economic groups. You start bringing in the utility needs to be able to have the interconnection timelines meet the actual deployment timelines for these, as well as then everything that goes into that with zoning, permitting for air, water, land, all of the logistics that factor into that. That I think climate careers end up being this very broad view of a lot of interchanging and interacting components. And I think that to again echo some of the comments that have been made before, there's a really unique spot to meet in that messy middle where you can bridge two or more of those components and where they interact to be able to bridge some of the technical limitations to the policy side, to the deployment side, to the industry side, and see how all of these components can come together. And I think for Southern California to think beyond the goods movement transit, one of the other elements ends up being the natural resource development, where not to plug UCR programs all day, but the School of Public Policy and the Science to Policy initiative that's now nested under that was originally started as a graduate level program and is now branched out to add a all student level student organization that's really designed around a Sacramento-based program to translate science and engineering for policymakers and bridge some of those conversations across disciplines and into actual implemented action. So I think there's a lot of that we start seeing showing up with discussions around the development in the Salton Sea and the lithium and resources that are available out there, and how that's balanced with climate and environmental justice for the communities in that area to be able to um, develop that in a sustainable way and access some of those untapped potential resources in a way that meets those regulatory demands, the industry interests, the supply chain constraints, and everything else that goes into those. So there's a very wide variety to open up these cross-discipline conversations. And I think regardless of the path you go down, there are ways to link it back to sustainability and climate that I think are becoming more and more present. As Alex ended, that I think a lot of this comes back to those questions of climate and emission reduction at the bottom line for large varieties of sectors and work now.
Yeah, I think the path of goods movement and all the intricacies that come with that are, huge in this region. And so our next question is kind of zooming in on a much smaller scale. And I know some of you have already alluded to the answer to this question in previous questions, but for students who are still in school and starting to think about their careers, what types of hands-on experiences, whether that's internships or research, do you think are most valuable? And are there any specific skills or certifications that really help candidates stick out?
I could jump on this one. So I was a bit of a non-traditional student. I worked through my associate's degree, my bachelor's degree, and then my master's, got my master's like later in my 30s. I will tell you that hands-on experience matters more than people want to admit. Internships are great, but what really stands out is whether you've actually worked with the data, being in the field or contributing to something that holds up to some sort of scrutiny. Some of those examples are going to be like your field sampling and monitoring work, GIS analysis tied to real world decisions. GIS is, has always been a big thing, but it's getting a little bit bigger. And that can be tied to water, drought, fires, a lot of different, environmental sustainability all across the regions, and hazards. Modeling programs, Modlo 6, those kind of things, surface water modeling like HEC-RAS, HEC-HMS. Many of those things are free. You can find those things online and how to do them. You can take courses in them. With regard to GIS, you can get certs in those. Research that goes beyond a class assignment is probably a big one. And then, and definitely working with stuff like messy data sets, not clean ones, stuff that, you have really had your hands on. So in terms of skills, I'd say, GIS, ArcPro, get familiar with it. Basic data analysis, Excel's fine, but I would probably lean into some coding, Python, Arcade, things like that. Now that's going to probably come up later, but with AI, you're going to have to know a little bit about coding, but AI is probably going to take over a bulk of coding. Understanding regulatory frameworks, super important, because whatever you're going to deal with, you're going to be likely dealing with a regulatory framework. And then communication, make sure you're able to communicate to a wide range of audiences, subject matter experts, commissioners, the public. Know your audience, get pretty good. Can you explain technical work to a non-technical stakeholder? So certifications can help, but they're not going to replace real world experience. I would take somebody who struggled through a real data set over somebody with 5 certifications and no applied work. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
I was excited to chime in. I did see Gustavo's comment in the chat, and really echo Erica's comments on the hands-on applied experience. So as you progress through your career, I encourage you, whether it's a separate journal that you keep, or maybe you just keep a working doc on your laptop. What are the key projects you've worked on? What are your wins? How have you actively provided value to the organizations you have had internships at? What is your hands-on experience? I also cannot underscore enough the importance of soft skills. Being able to give a great handshake, have a good first impression when you meet somebody, look someone in the eye, have cordial small talk conversations, be part of a team. And so I really encourage you, don't just focus on your technical expertise and growing your technical skills. Really be hyper aware of your soft skills and how you're presenting yourself when you introduce yourself to someone, any engagements that you have, speaking opportunities, interview practice, 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 practice for your interviews. And to Gustavo's question, so whether that's a shadowing opportunity or an internship, there's also a lot of really great courses through a shameless plug for UCR University Extension. So there's a grant proposal writing course, and you can actually work start to finish. And by the end of that, you'll have a full grant proposal that you've done. So you're kind of balancing certifications with that hands-on, actionable, tangible experience that you're developing. So you can say, wow, look, I got this great certification, but here is my hands-on experience. I wrote this full proposal start to finish. And oftentimes at UCR Extension, current students can get discounts on some of those certificate courses. So be sure to check those out and take advantage of that while you have a little bit of time.
I'll chime in to say that, like Erica and Miranda both mentioned, I too am a big advocate of getting out there. And I mean, where I know a lot of you are at in maybe close a quarter and looking at the next steps, I definitely understand the temptation and perceived pressure to say get like a big fancy internship at a Fortune 500 company or like a summer long community service abroad or some fancy certification or stuff like that. But my case is for starting smaller, like start with what's at home, start with where you're already plugged in. That could be scooters on campus or compost bins or the lack thereof, or transit access, like awareness of what's required and what's available. You could like just find out where and how that's managed on campus. Start there, like start with the club. Um, I'll say that, like at least for me too, as an entry level hiring manager, I often find myself most compelled by candidates who've taken steps to make an earnest difference where they already are, instead of like, seeking to climb ladders for the sake of it or doing things that look good on a resume. Um, I encourage like embedding yourself in organizations and causes that you care about rather than ones that just look good as a line item. And I promise that's perceptible to a hiring manager. At least for me, I've found that students who are often doing their best to make a difference where they are, like whether that's on campus or in Riverside or wherever you live, those often grow up to be the very same people who do that same thing in big jobs or at big companies or on big stages. Um, to that end, regarding certifications and skills, I mean, I'd almost encourage de-emphasis there, especially on the certifications bit. I mean, those are so many of them are so expensive. Please don't pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for one extra bullet point on your resume. If you really need that, 9 times out of 10, your company will pay for it when they hire you. Um, and like when it comes to skills, um, while I agree with a lot of the like touch points that Erica and Miranda, um, called out. I I think there's a role for everybody in, this big stage. I don't think you have to be a programmer to be successful. I don't think you have to be a regulatory expert to be successful. I don't think you have to be a good writer, have to be a good speaker. Like what you're good at, there's a role to play. And not to mention that even if that's not a point of emphasis now, this industry evolves so much and so critically and so fast. And therefore, when it comes to skills, maybe these are more traits, but I'd almost say that things like open-mindedness and adaptability are maybe some of the most valuable qualities when you choose to a career in sustainability or climate.
I would agree with each of the panelists again. And to close it out, I think similarly that I think there's a lot that comes into this for what you did and what you got out of something more than just having a bullet point on your resume and adding that line or padding a little bit. And one of the professional organizations I volunteer with, the Air and Waste Management Association, a few weeks ago, we were working with a university that's looking to update some of their environmental curriculum for what students really need going out into the workforce right now. And so this is a bit of a fresh topic for surveying early, mid, and late career folks that are working throughout the environmental space in a few different disciplines. And I think it echoes a number of these same points where there's value to certain discipline specific certifications. Like if you're an engineer at some point, having your engineer in training and professional engineering licenses can make sense if you're in consulting or a space where that is really required. And otherwise, hands-on experience and what you got from that is really going to be the winner. And that I think I hear the echoed point that it doesn't necessarily matter what exactly that is, that versus getting engaged, getting involved with something, whether that's some of the programs that the other panelists have mentioned, or for example, my first internship was in iBanking, and that's not financial banking, that's corneal tissue transplant, and is entirely unrelated to anything that I do at this point, but it exposed me to a lot of different regulatory structures, how to think about things, how some of the spaces on the medical and biological side work, and just starting to get some of that hands-on experience thinking through different problems, working in teams, working with people, being able to prepare deliverable results to senior folks. And I think there's a lot that can go into that that will come out of any experience that you get, as opposed to something that feels like it is directly climate or directly whatever it is your career path in theory wants to be. It's not always a direct next step. And I think that's also where you can learn a lot because maybe you do something that you think you're really excited about and it's not what you were hoping for. And then you can learn that and move forward with it. And similarly, if you do something that seems a little bit tangential or unrelated and you're not excited about it first, the worst case is you learn something from that. And the best case is maybe that turns out to really drive you down a bit of a different direction and you see something there.
Thank you for that. Our next question is slightly speculative, so I'm going to ask our panelists to pull out their crystal balls, but we discuss how to prepare, students for their careers and what that may look like. In almost every discussion, and it's come up in this discussion so far of the future and the job market currently, AI comes up. So how is and will artificial intelligence shape the climate and sustainability work in your field? And again, slightly speculative, so do your best.
Sure, I'll go. It's definitely becoming more and more utilized at the DoD level, at the county and city level, and at the consultant level. So be prepared to use it. It's useful, but it's not going to replace domain experience anytime soon. So keep that in mind. Where it's helping is kind of synthesizing these larger amounts of information or say planning documents or anything like that. It'll help to support some early stage analysis, really good with literature review if you're careful. It does like to hallucinate. It's not going to do your work for you. Be aware of that. It will help with like drafting and organizing some stuff. Where it's not ready is interpretation. It's not going to interpretate your environmental data correctly. It does have bias. So understand that, understand the regulatory nuance, understand that anything you put in there is potentially available to the public if you have a litigation issue. So something, make sure you have uh, your own technical defense and not something that was provided to you by AI, because that could be an issue. I think some of the issues I see with AI is people overestimating what those output means. What those as you're entering in your queries, if you overestimate that it's correct in its output. In water and climate work, being wrong has regulatory and real world consequences. So it's very important that you're making sure that you back everything up with facts. My advice is to use AI as a tool, not a substitute for understanding. If you don't know how to sanity check the output, then you shouldn't be relying on it.
To go right and build off that, I think there's a lot that we see that is very cautionary. And a lot of the work that I end up doing is supporting expert services in litigation and regulatory engagement contexts. And with that, EPA and the numerous regulatory bodies, as well as the attorneys we work with, have various policies and disclaimers that there is certainly a use of AI that's coming into a lot of these, but it is not the end all be all and should not be trusted. And for a regulatory submittal, for example, you will still be held accountable for what that is. And particularly in the consulting space, if we're submitting something on behalf of a client, in that case, they will be held responsible for that. So there is still the requisite technical understanding of what's going on and being able to do that final fact check. But I think one place as well that there is a lot of opportunity as things are changing is this is a good space to be good at a couple different things as opposed to being very, very good at just one thing. And for example, something that we have, especially with a lot of our junior staff, is ways that you can leverage AI in your work and continue to build off of that. And I think there's this very early development where if you get familiar with these tools now, there's momentum to that, and you can keep learning with these tools as they grow and adopt. And for example, in the EPA's current proposed budget that came out earlier this week or last week, they have a proposal for 471 jobs, I believe it was, that would be AI relevant. And so this would be specifically looking at how the EPA can improve efficiencies, whether that's within their lab and research work, as well as then moving out into the regulatory and enforcement space. So if you have this environmental context, this environmental background, and can then also leverage some of these tools, it brings together a lot of really unique skill sets that someone that's a dedicated computer science or computer engineering experience may not have that ability to fully pair. So I think there's a lot of that context that can be brought together. And then again, it's a question of leveraging tools in an appropriate way.
Thank you for that.
Oh, well, I was just going to jump in and say, gosh, I think that was all very summarized, such that I don't have too much more to add, but I'll underline a couple points. And perhaps my answer is more regarding consulting than, say, climate or sustainability proper. Um, but no crystal balls needed to answer this question because I don't think this is speculation about the future. It's now. The implementation of AI is already in full throes. And it's such that, I mean, the pace of business nowadays is such that you need to use like state-of-the-art tools like that um, to keep up. But the point I would underline is that I think was made really well by both Erica and Ryan is the note of caution. Understanding where use is appropriate, where it's necessary, and what the limitations of that are is vital. And I think if I'm really honest with you, I think that's what some of the older generations, myself included, struggle with at times, taken for granted, like, oh, look at this perfect thing. It just spat out for me in 2 seconds. Here we go. We're done. And fundamentally, I think that that's something Gen Z is way better at than the rest of us because you all grew up with this and you know how to operate it and you know what the limits of it are better than your predecessors. So I think that will be an advantage of you right out the gate.
Great. I think we will move on to our final question here. Many of our students are actively looking for internship or fellowship opportunities to gain experience in this field. So we just wanted to take some time here and offer you the opportunity to discuss any current or upcoming opportunities at your organizations that students should be aware of, or any programs from your organization that you'd like to highlight in general. So please go ahead.
I can go first with probably both the most and the least to offer. I think this will be similar to something like Ramble. AECOM is one of these mega companies that does everything under the sun, from planning to architecture to engineering to construction. I mean, that's also alongside names like, say, WSP or Jacobs or Arup or Arcadis or Tetra Tech, with hundreds of thousands of employees across the globe and offices in every major city. Um, which is to say that there are far more internship and entry-level job opportunities than I could even begin to name. And I also know firsthand how daunting and unproductive it feels just fire these black box applications out into companies like this that you never hear back from again. I think the advantage of like big companies like this is that they're always hiring, and just by happenstance, because there's so many people and so many offices, there's a chance that you might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody working at one of these. As I kind of mentioned with my first job, at least in my experience, it's really that personal connection that can make the critical difference, especially in this world of unlimited black box applications. Like the only way to stand out is only this kind of the old fashioned way sometimes. So um, that's all to say that like my employer, AECOM, I know has internships and jobs out, and I don't have any specific ones to point to right this second. But I'd encourage you to look, and I'd encourage you to take that a step further and see if you can't find somebody who knows something personally about that.
Thank you.
I can probably go next. So here at SoCal, we do a lot of regional work. So we're definitely coordinating across our agencies with regard to water quality, water quantity, and climate resilience. For students, the types of opportunities you kind of want to look for, whether with us or somebody else, because we do take on interns, is like regional monitoring programs, data management and analysis projects, climate adaptation planning. That's a big one. Pretty much everybody's either got an adaptation plan or they're working on one. And water quality and watershed modeling. So even if there isn't an opening at the moment, I strongly encourage reaching out. Also, this is not to plug a different company, but the DoD has, there's a place called NAVFAC XWIC, which does all the science environmentally behind the DoD when it comes to, climate resilience and treating contaminants and things like that, all of those things. So there are academic internships there. I can definitely drop the STEM program internships link into the chat and let you guys take a look at it from there. So those are just a couple of opportunities I know of right off the top of my head, but I know that there are a lot. So I would encourage maybe jumping on LinkedIn, searching up internships, creating yourself a nice profile and getting your name out there. Start following people, start following companies, start following federal agencies and local agencies and state agencies. That'll give you a lot more openings.
All of that is amazing advice. I'm really excited for all of you to navigate this next chapter as you graduate and embark on your career. I would echo those comments and also encourage you. You can sign up for specific job notifications. So if there's a specific role you're interested in, you can go to that agency's website. A lot of specifically city and the county space, they use NeoGov. So you can go onto their website and make a custom notification. So the moment that job posting comes available, you get that alert in your inbox and you can be quick to apply. Right now, I can share the City of Riverside does have internship opportunities, so you can be on the lookout for those on our website. And also, I'll go back and remember the informational interviews where I opened the panel. You don't have to apply. Just be authentic, be yourself, share your passion, and it could be something that leads to a greater opportunity down the road. Or it could just be that hands-on experience that helps direct you to your future path. So be very aware of what's going on online. I echo the LinkedIn comments. It's great for messaging, also great for highlighting your book of work and your achievements that you're proud to have worked on. So you're highlighting those actionable experiences, and you can highlight certain posts, pin certain posts to your profile, and just keep building your resume and you'll have so much to be proud of and so much to showcase.
I think I've been saying this whole panel that climate, sustainability, this is all very large, broad topic. But I think at the same time, in this context, it's a very small world too. One thing that I've seen is whether it's working with the ports, the academic research side, local government, state government, federal government, consulting, industry, is you do tend to run into a lot of the same people again and again. And so there is a lot of merit to having those relationships, doing what you can to maintain those relationships, even if it's not a regular conversation. Staying in touch is always a good way to have those warm contacts that can help a lot in this case. And I think, again, that's where a lot of this can come back to the question of, as opposed to trying to think 10 steps down the road to what your career might be in 5 or 10 years, is really what you're doing right now or what you could be doing next week or next month as far as volunteering, getting some of those first contacts. And a lot of those programs will then have connections that can lead you into those next steps. And if you find those mentors, they will want to see you succeed. So there's a lot of momentum that can just come off of having those relationships, having that work, and having people that will be happy to vouch for you into those next steps.
Oh, you're on mute, Kristen.
So sorry. Thank you all to our panelists for that discussion so far. We're now going to take a few questions from the audience, and I think Ryan's points lead us well into one question in specific, which is, what characteristics should people look for in a mentor? In hindsight, were there characteristics of a mentor you would have liked at the beginning of your career?
I can go ahead and jump in. So, I think like for me, with regard to how I started, it would have been really nice to have a mentor that was more of a generalist when it came to science, so geology, hydrology, because often it gets pointed in one or two directions, and they don't tell you that you can definitely be a generalist, and you probably should, because it kind of opens up those doors. So you know, as a mentor, that would be good to have somebody who's working in a field similar to what you are interested in. I'll tell you, when I started college, it was not to be a geologist or hydrologist or an environmental scientist. It was actually to do criminal justice. So it went totally the other way. And that often happens. You end up finding, you take a class or you do a project, you do something that triggers your interest. And I would say once that happens and you get the chills and you find something that you really, really like, I would follow that rabbit hole all the way down and just talk to everybody in that field or around that field, somewhere around there. And it'll benefit you. It definitely will.
Okay.
I'd like
Um,
to show, oh, I'm so sorry, Kristen.
no, please go ahead.
Love to chime in. And I think on the journey too, if there's anything I can leave all of you with is a really interesting drawing. You've probably seen it on LinkedIn or a meme or a type of leadership course. But I think all of us, and probably at the stage you're at, you might see your future. Oh no, it won't show. Okay, like this. This is your path, right? You're studying what you should be studying. You might have an idea of a career, your vocation, the type of path forward. Um, but that's not how life is. That's not how the workforce is, and that's not how we develop a skill set that really um, makes you a well-rounded, a really robust professional and person. And so really what you're training for and what things will look like is this. So it's not as straight, it's not linear, it's not a clear process, but each step you're trying something and you're ideating, you're learning, you're trying something new, you're learning from that experience. And at the end of the day, all experience is good experience. I think there's a lot of pressure on doing things the right way, following the right path, doing the right thing, connecting with the right people. Um, all of that is important, but really, I want to underscore to all of you today the importance of experience. And you can't learn and you can't grow if you don't try. So I know that's how my path looks. That's probably how some of the panelists' paths look. Erica sharing about criminal justice jogged my memory on that. And at the end of the day, they're all great experiences. They're all making you a well-rounded, passionate professional that you are. And so for mentors, I think it's really someone with patience, with experience that you're interested in. And I know for me, I have two so far, I would say lifelong, but I guess career long is more accurate mentors. And one was one of the first city managers that I ever worked with. And I worked on, it was my first staff report I was taking to city council. I worked so hard on it. I thought it was amazing. I had always been a great writer in undergrad, grad school, and I got her edits back and it was like all red. I was mortified. Like, how did I do such a bad job? I do not understand. And she just had so much patience with me. She sat down, we went through all of the edits together, and I could really see um, the desired deliverable through her perspective and through her eyes. And I always cherish that experience and keep that with me as I'm coaching my staff and especially editing We've got staff reports to edit every week. If you want to work in local government, it's all report writing. But just really look for someone who's patient, someone with skills who you admire and who you can learn from, and keep in touch. Don't just, it's a two-way street, right? It's not just learning and gaining value from them. You're providing value to them right back as well. So, just building a trusting relationship that can stand the test of time, and that will be something that's invaluable to you in your career as you grow.
Thank you for that comment. That's great. Um, so I think our next question that we'll take is, what is your favorite and least favorite part of the field or job that you work in?
I'll start with qualities, both, I guess it's a little favorite and least favorite. I mean, everything is changing all of the time. The targets are changing, the drivers are changing, the limitations are changing, the resources are changing. It's such a dynamic space to be in sustainability or climate mitigation or climate adaptation or energy management. And so I think you can find that both exciting and motivating. You can also find that daunting and frustrating. So that's that's something that I personally love about the field. I suppose one thing that's I don't love about it, but is also just kind of how it goes, is because it's a vanguard industry, defined career paths within it are not generations old established yet, right? I mean, look at your panelists. We all come from pretty different backgrounds. And folks who are working in the space today don't come from programs like, you know, titled climate change or titled decarbonization or titled sustainability. Like when I went to school, there was not an office of sustainability. Um, so I think that I know that that's a challenge because there's not point and shoot entry opportunities everywhere. So that's something that I know is difficult and I don't envy for people graduating today.
For me, I love challenges, and that's why I tell everyone I'm so passionate and so driven about working in local government, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm energized by the opportunity, I'm energized by possibility of really big, really impactful work. So we are not just taking care of the current economy, we're building the future economy. We're building our future city. We're making policy plans and practices for 25 years from now. So we're not only impacting quality of life and lived experience for now, we have the unique opportunity and privilege of building the future of a city. And for me, it's so challenging, so rewarding, so fulfilling, and so energizing. I think least favorite, and it's all problem solving. So sometimes, as I had opened, nobody goes to school, nobody says, oh, when I grow up, I want to be an economic developer or I want to be a city manager. You learn and you get experience, and that's my squiggly line. Um, so when I have to explain what I do for a living, oftentimes to people, I always say, explain it like you're explaining it to your mom or to your grandma or your grandpa. And I say, well, I'm a problem solver. I bring investment to communities and I'm a problem solver. It's easier to say. What I don't enjoy is everybody thinks its results happen overnight. And while we move with urgency and we really have purpose in the work that we do, really the results and what I share with my team, our results for tomorrow are built upon the work that we're doing today. And so we're working with intention, we're moving quickly, but these big efforts, they take time. So it might not seem like something's happening quickly or the city's not moving quickly. And that perception always brings me a source of pain because I know how hard the team is working and all of our efforts. And success isn't instantaneous and it doesn't happen overnight. So, a lot in this climate tech space, I haven't gotten a chance to talk about with all of you yet today. But careers in other companies and bringing those jobs to Riverside is what's transforming our economy. So, in the last 18 months, we've had extraordinary success in attracting 6 international companies we call it green, in the green tech and the climate tech space to Riverside. And that's unheard of. A city would be so happy, so lucky to attract one of these major companies per year. So we've got so much great momentum, and now everyone says, what's next? What's the next company? What's the next announcement? And so I love the pressure, and I'm really excited about growing and building that momentum. But to me, I'm always trying to be a good communicator, tapering expectations. Good things take time and it doesn't happen overnight, while also wanting to have great results that speak for themselves and show the level of investment and interest and passion that is part of Riverside.
That's great. Thank you. So next question, within sustainability careers, which fields do you think are most impacted by the limited availability of entry-level roles or the most competitive to break into? Also, I'm going to add the kind of converse of that. What are some good entry-level roles that they should keep their eyes out for?
I could probably speak to that, at least the first part. I would say, even though these are kind of challenging roles, geology and hydrology and hydrogeology. This is a field set in which a lot of people are aging out. So they're about to retire. There's nobody to really fill in those spaces. So you're going to start seeing a lot of job openings for those. It can be challenging because oftentimes it's like, yes, entry level, but you need to have 5 years of experience. But I guarantee you that's going to start changing as we're losing geologists and hydrologists and hydrogeologists to retirement. So something to think about there. With regard to entry level, I would probably look to anything environmental. It's just such a big, broad field, very general, and you can get in there anywhere. You know, they're always looking for people to help out sampling, always looking for people to help out with like grant writing, always looking for assistance with, like even in our own planning department, we have an intern and we try to get them as much experience looking at data and potentially going out with some of our contractors and doing sampling and doing fun things like that. Once you do that, you as an intern, your name is getting out there. You might be working with a particular contractor that we hire, and they might be hiring. And as soon as you graduate, you might be able to migrate right into that. And that's a great entry level type of thing. So those are my suggestions. And I might be biased because, degree in geology and hydrology. So
I want to jump in to second that some. I think the question was, what jobs are more available right now versus what are less available right now. And unfortunately, like a lot of things, I think it boils down to the current, political climate, which is to say, that jobs that have to be there are there, and jobs that are a bit discretionary are the ones that are disappearing some. And what I mean is, I'll echo what Erica said pretty steadfastly, that environmental jobs are here to stay at this point, whereas that was the contest of yesteryear. I mean, again, it goes back to regulation, especially in the state of California. These are forced to be fulfilled. Therefore, there's jobs to support that. Not to mention that they're fun. Erica got into that a little bit. And I mentioned briefly that my undergraduate's environmental engineering. My first job was in prototypical environmental services. That is the best job you can get coming out of school. It's so fun. You go to so many places, like sampling she talked about. You go to all sorts of industrial sites. You do all sorts of fun things. I could not recommend it more. The flip side of that, and what I regret to report, is kind of the forward, like if all the environmental services are the backwards facing stuff, you got 200 years of industrial history, air, water, soil, all polluted, all that cleanup stuff. This stuff is here to stay. The forward facing stuff, you got 200 years of industrial history. Here are all the lessons learned. Here's what we do better moving forward, performance based design or energy planning, those sorts of things. often sustainability, circular economy, what have you. At the federal level, those are initiatives that have been tampered down as much as is legal and in some cases not right now. States have either followed suit or doubled down the opposite direction, counties and cities the same. It's a mixed bag whether those opportunities still exist or not. And if and when they do, a lot of times they're kind of coded differently now, right? Instead of sustainability, it could be about resilience. There's a lot of other ways that that's coded, but I want to emphasize that the work remains as well, not as critical as ever, more critical than ever. So if you're really interested in going that forward-facing direction versus exclusively the backwards half on the face of on the basis of availability, I encourage you to take the effort to go find these. Although I will caution that it's harder now than it was 2 years ago.
Definitely.
I would, I think, lean back to some of the first comments as part of this as well, where there is certainly this retirement crisis that we keep hearing about, and that's everything from the regulatory agencies to the people that I work with. I work with a number of our very senior folks and leaders that are well into their 70s, and including my advisors at UCR, at least one of them is north of 80. So there are a lot of these people that are still around, still doing a lot of really great work, but at some point they look to pass off that work to the next generation and continue that transition. And I think tying in a little bit with the AI question as well, there's been a lot of this discussion, I think particularly for those of us on the consulting side, that consulting's always had this sort of pyramid structure where you have these senior leaders at the top and progressively larger teams doing a lot of the work that contributes to that. So is that going to get narrowed by AI? And there's a lot of dialogue saying yes around that, but there's also a lot of dialogue saying no. And I think that's where there's some of the companies, and I know a number of the consulting firms view it this way, where we want to hire people so that they can continue progressing. And for the mid-level and senior folks in 5, 10, and 20 years, you have that trained staff, you have that expertise on a team. And if you say AI is going to solve this all in 5 or 10 years and don't hire anybody, you are looking at the potential for that. So I think there are a lot of different opportunities just depending on the sentiment there that I think depends on some of the different directions you might be looking to go.
So very specific follow-up question for you, Ryan. Were you working with Ron Loveridge at all?
I was not, but if we're looking for the people that have done great work over a very lengthy career, Wayne Miller at CSERT is an excellent mentor for those of you that have the opportunity to have a class with him or have a meeting with him. I think there is a lot to be learned from these people that have gone through the development of Clean Air Act amendments and clean fuel requirements in a time that those didn't exist. And we're certainly looking at different technological changes now, but there's a lot of those frameworks that still carry over. And there's questions that come back up again and again that there's no replacing 40, 50, in some cases, 60 years of experience working on these topics.
Definitely. Okay, I think that will wrap up the Q&A portion of our event today. Thank you again to everyone, to Alex, Erica, Miranda, and Ryan, for taking time to share your experience with us and answer our questions. It's been very valuable for our students to hear just, from people working in the field directly and the range of paths that you all have taken and the advice, you share. And we really, really appreciate that. And to everyone who joined us here today, all the students, thank you for spending your morning with us. Again, we really appreciate it. We hope that you're walking away with a better understanding of some of these opportunities that exist in the field and maybe even some new ideas for how to get involved. So again, thank you for being here. And there are many other Earth Month events, so feel free to look into those and join. And again, thank you so much for your time.